Welcome to Reparations Roundup News and Views with the incredible Nkechi Taifa, featuring current updates and historical tidbits on the reparations movement in the U.S. and worldwide. Taifa is authentic and unapologetic, captivating and charismatic, entertaining and witty, and one of the most knowledgeable and longest-serving experts on the issue of reparations in the country. Now here's your host, award-winning author and attorney, Nkechi Taifa.
Thank you so very much, Chair Moore, Vice Chair Brown, esteemed members of the California Reparations Task Force, and public at large. I'd like to start out by saying that what the state of California is engaging in right now is history in the making, and your efforts as the first state to establish a commission to study and develop reparation proposals is to be loudly applauded. I'd like to know if you can see me on the screen right now. Because I don't. Okay, good. So my presentation will reflect on the history of the reparations movement in the United States. I have been actively working on issues involving reparations since 1975, at a time when the topic was not popular, when it was on the fringes, not fashionable. It was a time when one would be branded as a militant, which I was, or revolutionary, which I was, or just plain crazy, which I was not. So it gives me much pleasure that today some of the leading minds in this country are promoting the right to and the need for reparations. Now, despite or perhaps because of today's surge in attention to this issue of longstanding import, I feel it critical that we all understand that the demand for reparations in the United States for unpaid labor and terrorism during the enslavement era and post-slavery discrimination is not novel or new and did not begin in the 21st century. The claim did not drop from the sky with Ta-Nehisi Coates' brilliant Atlantic magazine article, The Case for Reparations, or for Randall Robinson's impassioned book, The Debt, What America Owes to Blacks, both of which galvanized the issue in different decades and thrust it into national conversation. Talk about reparations did not start with Hannah Nicole Jones' article in the New York Times or because of threads on Twitter. Indeed, there has been no substantial period of time when the call for redress has been neglected. Two of the first formal records for reparations in the United States that were pursued and won came from formerly enslaved Black women, Belinda Sutton Royal and Henrietta Wood, who successfully sued their former slave owners' estates, Belinda in Massachusetts and Henrietta in Kentucky. At the end of the Civil War, newly freed Black leaders worked closely with General Sherman in fashioning the concept of 40 acres, which he incorporated in his Special Field Order number 15, only to have the critical compensatory provision stripped by President Andrew Johnson. In 1898, Callie House and Isaiah Dickerson spearheaded the first mass-based reparations movement in the United States, the National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief, Bounty, and Pension Association. The organization embraced 600,000 dues-paying members seeking compensation from federal agencies in the form of pensions for the aging persons formerly held in enslavement, their surviving spouses, caregivers, and heirs. Callie House was targeted, wrongly convicted, and imprisoned for a year and a day on bogus mail fraud charges in 1917 for her grassroots organizing work. On the heels of Callie House's movement was Marcus Garvey and the Universal Improvement Association during the early part of the 20th century, which galvanized hundreds of thousands of Black people. And that movement was also destabilized by government forces, and Garvey unjustly imprisoned and deported. One of his followers, Queen Mother Audley Moore, born in Louisiana in 1898, championed the cause of reparations throughout the 20th century. But she was perhaps the most vocal advocate for reparations during the 1950s and 60s. In both 1957 and 1959, she presented a petition to the United Nations against genocide and for self-determination and land, and was active in every major reparations movement until her death in 1996. Malcolm X talked about the concept of reparations in his speeches. Martin Luther King proposed a Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged, which emphasized redress for both the historical victimization and exploitation of Blacks, as well as their present-day degradation. Consistently, the Nation of Islam's publications, Muhammad Speaks and later The Final Call, demanded that the United States exempt Black people from all taxation as long as we are deprived of equal justice. In 1966, the Black Panther Party listed the issue of payback for slave labor and the overdue debt of 40 acres as point number 3 of their 10-point program. In 1968, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa proclaimed in its Declaration of Independence that we claim no rights from the United States of America other than those rights belonging to oppressed people anywhere in the world, and these include the right to damages, reparations. In April 1969, the Black Manifesto was adopted at the National Black Economic Development Conference, which included a demand that white churches and synagogues pay $500 million in reparations to Black people in the U.S., touted as only the beginning of the amount owed. The following month, civil rights activist James Forman interrupted Sunday service at the Riverside Church in New York to announce the reparations demand from his Black Manifesto. In 1972, the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana, adopted the anti-depression program of the Republic of New Africa, an act authorizing the payment of a sum of money in reparations for slavery, and a negotiating committee between representatives of the United States and the Black nation to determine kind, dates, and other details of paying reparations. The Mississippi Loyalist delegation to the Democratic National Convention accepted the anti-depression program that same year. Throughout the 1960s through the 1980s, just about every radical Black organization had the issue of reparations as part of their platform in some way, shape, form, or fashion, including the African People's Socialist Party, whose African National Reparations Organization spearheaded annual reparations tribunals, the December 12th movement, which mobilized internationally, the People's Organization, the National Black United Front, just to name a few. Broad national attention to the call for reparations for descendants of Africans enslaved in the United States unquestionably accelerated with the 1987 founding of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, NCOBRA. The spark for its founding emanated from a September 1987 conference on race and the Constitution at Harvard Law School, spearheaded by the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Reparations had always been a part of Black nationalist and Pan-Africanist agendas, but now there was interest from a Black legal organization fueled by receptiveness from a key NCBL leader and fellow panelist at this hearing, Adjoa Ayatoro. She invited Imari Obadeli, president of the Republic of New Africa, Chokwe Lumumba, co-founder of the New African People's Organization, and myself, along with economist Richard America, to address the issue of the constitutionality of reparations on the panel at Harvard, and to discuss whether the U.S. Constitution should be amended with a reparations demand. The three of us longstanding champions in the New African Independence Movement jointly concluded that there was no need to amend the Constitution because the basis for the Black nation's claim for reparations already existed within it. Our presentations from that conference were compiled in a small, power-packed but lengthy title book published in 1987 called Reparations Yes, the legal and political reasons why new Africans, Black people in the United States, should be paid now for the enslavement of our ancestors and for war against us after slavery. Our presentations were replete with historical precedents for reparations, new African political science, and analysis of international law, including our revolutionary fervor promoting the right to self-determination. Indeed, we felt the issue of self-determination for the descendants of Africans held as slaves in the United States to be key and central to our reparatory justice demand. Why? Because after the enslavement era, Black people never had the opportunity to decide for ourselves what our future would hold, with full appreciation of our options and reparations to put our choices into reality. Would we repatriate back to Africa? If so, how? Would we settle in the independent Haiti Republic or somewhere else in the diaspora? Would we accept the U.S. offer of 14th Amendment citizenship into the new white nation they were developing and strive to make a multiracial democracy real? Due to severed homeland ties, would we plant our own flag in the ground in this country that we worked and built, negotiate with the native peoples, and establish our own independent Black nation on this soil? Our theory was that a reparations settlement must include the manifestation of each of these options through a national plebiscite, inclusive of both direct and group benefits. For those who wish to repatriate, they should have sufficient resources to make that reintegration a reality, as well as for those who wish to immigrate elsewhere. For those who wish to force this country to respect our rights as full citizens, that option must be accompanied by transformative change in policies and practices, closure of the Black-white wealth gap, elimination of educational and health disparities, cessation of mass incarceration disproportionately impacting Black people, and release of Black political prisoners. And for those who wish to establish an independent nation state on this soil, following the model of 5 states in the South or elsewhere, to likewise have the economic resources and political diplomatic recognition to make that self-determination choice a reality. Thus, the issue of reparations for brothers Imari, Chokwe, and myself was nothing new. It wasn't anything special or separate from what we have been engaged in for years as part of the New African Independence Movement. But what would come next and how it was handled was pivotal to the momentum that we see today. Black Reparations Commission President Dorothy Lewis, who worked closely with the Republic of New Africa and the African National Reparations Organization, had earlier witnessed firsthand while living in Alaska the Native Alaskan land claim reparations lawsuit and envisioned a similar result for African descendants in the U.S. She urged RNA President Imari Obadati to convene a national gathering on reparations to discuss how to increase its exposure and make the issue of reparations a household word. I credit Brother Imari for downplaying the new African independence politics outlined in our co-authored Reparations Yes book and agreeing to issue the call for reparations-loving people to convene in Washington to discuss, among other agenda items, how to move the issue of reparations for Black people in the United States forward. Brother Imari could have demanded that everyone had to refer to Black people as, quote, new Africans. But he didn't. He could have demanded that the only way forward was nation-to-nation reparations. But he didn't. We all could have succumbed to the very present U.S. government orchestrated COINTELPRO counterintelligence program that was tearing Black and progressive organizations apart. But we didn't. The higher ground was taken. And Imari Obadati made the unifying call for a mass-based gathering of activists not beholden to any specific ideology. And it was out of that historic September 26, 1987 gathering that the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, NCOBA, was born, bringing diverse groups under one umbrella. It was the perfect storm. The Black Power movement was open and receptive to a broad-based approach to advance the issue of reparations. The Black activist legal community largely sanctioned the Black nationalist effort, and we all were invigorated by the movement of the Civil Liberties Act in Congress, which would become law the following year, granting reparations to Japanese Americans. And so, it was in the throes of that fertile environment that Nkoba picked up the long-standing mantle of justice, reinvigorated the demand for reparations for the descendants of Africans enslaved in the United States, and broadened the concept through massive public education, accompanied by legislative and litigation-based initiatives. And I would like to briefly reflect on the new movement's legislative strategies and the progenitors of the modern era reparation litigation strategies, Ajura Adutoro and Deidre Palman Farmer, are witnesses with me at this hearing today, and I'm sure they'll discuss the pivotal work they have been involved with on litigation fronts. Encouraged by the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which granted reparations to Japanese Americans, and in response to the dogged persistence of a Detroit constituent known as Reparations Ray Jenkins, Congressman John Conyers expressed interest in introducing a reparations bill for the enslavement era and its vestiges in Congress. He felt that the recent passage of reparations for Japanese Americans, which started with a commission to study the issue, would be a strong precedent for Black people. Was everyone in this latest iteration of the reparations movement on one accord with a reparations study bill? Absolutely not. There were heated differences of opinion with many in the movement, questioning the need for continued study, that it was time for reparations now. Differences in strategy are not new. There were differences within the Japanese American community as to their strategy for reparations. There were differences with Jewish communities as to strategies. The key to success, however, lies in how differences are handled. Do they devolve into negative personal attacks, or are they handled with respectful discussion and analysis? After invigorating principled debate and an agreement to respectfully disagree by some, the majority strategic decision was made to work closely with Congressman Conyers and his staff in fashioning federal legislation. This resulted in the 1989 introduction of the Commission to Study Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act, later to be numbered H.R. 40, in remembrance of the thwarted 19th century promise to provide freed Blacks 40 acres and a mule. In essence, Representative Conyers' Study Commission bill provided the cover and the vehicle to have a public policy discussion on the issue of reparations, not only in the Congress of the United States, but across the country as well. As chair of Nkoba's legislative commission during those early years, the approach proved to be powerfully strategic. Its beauty was that the HR Study Commission bill was a less threatening and much easier approach through which to garner the much needed support for the concept of reparations that had been lacking in America and across the country. Indeed, it was the perfect education and mobilization tool that served to fertilize the ground for later broader mainstream acceptance. From 1990 through the early years of the 21st century, Nkoba chapter members and supporters influenced several state legislatures and scores of city councils across the country to pass reparation-themed legislation or resolutions endorsing H.R. 40. In 1990, the Louisiana House of Representatives passed a resolution in support of reparations. In 1991, State Senator Bill Owens introduced legislation into the Massachusetts Senate providing for the payment of reparations for slavery. Also in 2001, a bill was introduced in the New York State Assembly to create a commission to quantify the debt owed to African Americans. Nkoba chapters throughout the country encouraged city councils to endorse H.R. 40 with the passage of successful resolutions in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, the California city councils of Alameda County, Berkeley, Compton, Foster City, Inglewood, Los Angeles, Oakland, East Palo Alto, and San Francisco, the District of Columbia, Atlanta, Georgia, Chicago, and Evanston, Illinois, Baltimore, Maryland, Detroit, Michigan, Jackson and Claiborne County, Mississippi, St. Louis, Missouri, the New Jersey city councils of Camden, Passaic County, Patterson and Newark, Cleveland, Ohio, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas, Burlington, Vermont, Richmond, Virginia. All of these legislative mobilizations occurred over 2 decades before candidates vying for the 2020 Democratic nomination took center stage. The strategy, advanced by Nkoba over 30 years ago, achieved its goal of making reparations a household word. And it's now past time to bring that household word into reality. I am a part of the inaugural cohort of commissioners on the National African American Reparations Commission, NARC, convened in 2015 by Dr. Von Daniels at the Institute of the Black World 21st Century. NARC, under the leadership of fellow Commissioner Cam Howard, current co-chair of Nkoba, revisited the strategy of the 1989 Reparations Study Commission bill and proposed to Congressman Conyers that the legislation be updated from a mere study bill to a remedy bill. Thus, in 2016, the bill was revised to also incorporate the actual development of reparation proposals, now titled the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. And in addition, NARC has advanced a comprehensive yet preliminary 10-point program to guide reparatory justice demands by people of African descent in the U.S. Although my primary focus is obtaining reparations for the descendants of Africans enslaved in or subjected to Jim Crow laws in the U.S., it is important to recognize that the pursuit for reparations in the United States is also part of the international movement for reparations. As such, I've worked closely with supporters of reparations throughout the world, recognizing that the success of the movement for reparations for diasporic Africans anywhere advances the movement for reparations by Africans and African descendants everywhere. I am thrilled that my quest to have reparations seen as a legitimate concept for Black people beginning when I was a teenager during the 1970s is today becoming a reality. And while cash payments remain an important and necessary component of any claim for damages, the harms were multifaceted, thus the remedies must be so as well. A reparations settlement must be fashioned in as many ways as necessary to equitably address the countless manifestations of injury sustained from the enslavement era and its continuing vestiges and living legacies that collectively comprise a crime against humanity. In conclusion, Queen Mother Audley Moore has been crowned as the undisputed mother of the modern era reparations movement in the United States. And although the genius and role of Brother Imari Obadele played is largely absent from the popular annals of reparations lore, he has been acknowledged as the movement's father. And the story of Queen Mother Dorothy Lewis has yet to be written. I am inspired by the memory of the three of them, and as I conclude, I will call their names in libation, and please repeat after you hear their names, if you so wish, the word Ashe, which means also, so be it. Queen Mother Audley Moore, Ashe. Let's see if we can get this, see my little libation there. Okay. Brother President Imari Obadele, Ashe. Queen Mother Dorothy Lewis, Ashe. Belinda Royale, Ashe. Henrietta Wood, Ashe. Callie House, Ashe. Isaiah Dickinson, Ashe. Marcus Garvey, Ashe. Elijah Muhammad, Ashe. Reparations Ray Jenkins, Ashe. Chokwe Lumumba, Ashe. Ahmed Obafemi, Ashe. Christopher Alston, Ashe. Dara Abubakari, Darcy McIntyre, Ashe. Cannibal Afrique, Ashe. Njeri Algani, Ashe. Kalanji Olusegun, Ashe. Kwame Afo, Ashe. Milton McGriff, Ashe. Dr. Ronald Walters, Ashe. Herman Ferguson, Ashe. Omawale K. Fing, Ashe. Erlene Arikpo, Ashe. Nia Kumba, Ashe. Marilyn Killingham, Ashe. Conrad Warrell, Ashe. Aldari Ali, Ashe. Askia Muhammad, Ashe. State Senator Bill Owens, Ashe. Congressman John Conyers, Ashe, 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 as well as the so many countless others who never made it into the history books, but upon whose ancestral shoulders we firmly stand in our long standing journey for reparatory justice in this country. Ashe.
Ashe, thank you so much, Nkechi Taifa, for that incredibly moving and powerful testimony.
You have been listening to Reparations Roundup News and Views with People's Lawyer Nkechi Taifa. The issue of reparations is on fire, and Taifa is spreading the message like a storm. Visit reparationseducationproject.org for info on the movement. For the full Nkechi Taifa experience, visit nkechitaifa.org. Reparations is an issue whose time has come. Don't miss the next Reparations Roundup.